Tuesday, May 18th, and I'm going to call the special city council meeting to order. Would the city secretary please call the roll?
Mitchell.
Here.
Coach. Coach.
Here.
Ellison.
Present.
Flores Kale. Here. Rizzo.
Present.
Bradshaw.
Here.
Tobias.
Here.
All right, 7 members present. We have a quorum. Next up, citizen comments. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and speak? Seeing none in the gallery, I will close citizens' comments. Next up, executive session.
Pursuant to Chapter 551 Texas Government Code, the City Council reserves the right to convene into executive session from time to time as deemed necessary during this meeting. The City Council may convene into executive session pursuant to any lawful exception contained in Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, including any or all of the following topics: pending or contemplated litigation, or to seek the advice of the city attorney pursuant to Section 551.071, CO bond, possible creation of TERS, American Rescue Plan, automated metering infrastructure, Kyle Hartson Park, electric service, possible purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate pursuant to Section 551.072, acquisition of public parkland tracts, acquisition of right-of-way. Convene into executive session pursuant to Section 551.087 Texas Government Code to deliberate regarding the offer of economic incentives to one or more business prospects that the city seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the city. Project Pacific Blue, Project Eburning, Project Goldfish, Project SUFC, Project Shamrock, Project Wild Strawberry, Project Tomahawk, Project Pinstripes.
I'm going to call this meeting back to order. There was no action taken during executive session. There will be no action taken now. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we are adjourned. I'm going to wait 60 seconds and we'll call the regular meeting to order. The time is 7:07 p.m. It is Tuesday, May 18th, and I'm going to call this regularly scheduled city council meeting to order. Would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the city secretary please call the roll?
Mitchell.
Here.
Coach.
Here.
Ellison.
Present.
Flores Kale. Here. Rizzo.
Present.
Bradshaw.
Here.
Tobias.
Here.
All right, 7 members present. We have a quorum. Next up, approval of the minutes.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and approve the minutes for City Council special meeting May 1st, May 4th, and also a regular council meeting on the May 4th as well.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Tobias, seconded by Councilmember Rizzo, that we approve the minutes as outlined. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries 7-0. Next up, citizen comments period. At this time, we ask anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on any item to please do so. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and that you direct those comments to the mayor and council. We also ask that you fill out a citizen comments form and submit that either to myself or the city secretary. I have no one registered now. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward? All right, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close citizen comments. It is now closed. Next up, agenda item number 4, presentation, annual update of the Kyle Area Youth Advisory Council. Abby Power, chair of the Kyle Area Youth Advisory Council, is a sponsor. Mr. Koontz, go ahead. That's the way it's listed. No, that's fine.
Is that on? Okay. Good evening.
Mr. Mayor and Council, my name is Howard Koontz. I'm the Community Development Director. For the record, each year, the Kyle Area Youth Advisory Council makes a presentation to this board and talks about their progresses that they've had over the previous year. And so tonight we've got Abby Power and Melina Garza, two graduating seniors from Lehman High School, who are going to talk a little bit about their capstone project and the other experiences they had. So.
Thank y'all for having us. Like you said, I'm Abby Power. I go to Lehman High School. I'm a senior, and I'm the chair of KAYAC. Oh, here we go.
Hello guys, my name is Melina Garza and I'm the vice chair of KAYAC this year and I go to Lehman High School.
Okay, so before we get started with our summary, we wanted to talk about our year in numbers. So we have 8 returning members. We had 17 regular meetings. They were on the virtual platform of Ring Central. And with great success because I could call in from anywhere if I was still at a school function and anything, and a lot of our other members did that as well. We also have 8 new members from all 3 different high schools, so we're excited to grow our membership and expand across the community. And I'm going to hand it over to Melina to talk about our capstone project.
So like Howard said, every year we conduct an annual project called the Capstone Project. And this year our capstone project is called the Education Reform. Essentially the purpose of the Education Reform was to appeal to Hays CISD School District to add, reform, and implement changes into Hays CISD curriculum and other programs. We believe that this was necessary because Hays CISD does have some holes to fill, and we believe that a better educational system for its students would help better the students for their future and also build the leaders and innovative thinkers of Kyle's future.
So our project consisted of 4 topics. The first one was curriculum. So we have AP curriculum in Hays CISD, but another opportunity that we looked into was IB, the IB program, specifically with high schools. So it's International Baccalaureate. You can get a diploma that transfers to any Texas higher university for I think 32 credit hours. So that would be, you would be going into as a sophomore or even a junior into college. So you could focus on that major. Also within curriculum, we talked about the language programs. So in Hays CISD, we have a 2-way and a 1-way model in the elementary schools, but there's only 5 schools total, I believe, that practice those models. And we wanted to expand that because with our research, we found that targeting languages at a younger age for children would help them become better speakers overall.
Another component of the education reform was driver's education. And essentially, we proposed to Hays CISD to add driver's education to all 3 high schools in the district. We believe that this is necessary because our school district has a lot of economically disadvantaged students, and this would help those families in need, especially because through a private institution, it costs around $400 per student. So we wanted to add a program to the district to potentially reduce the cost and just help people get a good driver's education through the school. Another component of the reform was to add life classes. Life classes are essentially like home economics courses that have basically like disappeared from modern day education. We would add these in order for their students to learn financial literacy and professional etiquette. We believe that this is necessary because a lot of students go and graduate and don't have the skills they need to survive in a professional environment. So this would help them practice learning how to do their taxes, as well as building a resume and other just essential life skills to succeed in life.
That was awesome. And then our last topic was academic extracurriculars. This was a passion project of mine because I'm kind of a nerd. So I wanted to bring Model UN as well as the academic decathlon to our high schools. And so we ended up being able to present to the superintendent advisory panel, and I'll let Lynn talk about that. Sorry.
So yes, we presented to the superintendent advisory panel, which is essentially a panel that helps advise the school districts like what they can improve on, and they use it to get students' feedback. Members of the panel include Superintendent Dr. Wright, as well as School Board President Orozco, and around 8 students per high school. In our presentation, we detailed several things we did in order to research, such as we conducted community surveys in order to get feedback from the community about how they felt about adding such programs. And overall, we got positive feedback from both the community and advisory panel. After we presented our findings and research, we also had a lively discussion with them in which we actually talked about the logistics in adding such proposals, and they were really positive and really wanted to try to implement all of our proposed ideas.
So like Maylene just said, there were, oh, hold on. Oh gosh. Okay. Like Melina said, there was a really positive reaction. Even though we're seniors, and we know that some of these changes won't be implemented next year or even the year after, we're excited about the change that could be brought to the district, and which translates to Kyle overall as far as having better leaders and better prepared professionals.
We would like to thank y'all for letting us present tonight and just for continuing to support KAYAC over the years.
Yes, and thank you for giving us a platform to talk about what we're passionate about, and yeah, we thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Anybody have any thoughts, feedback? Councilor Rizzo.
Yeah, just really quickly, I'm glad that you're thinking about the driver education course. I actually took the driver education course at Hayes High School. Coach Posey was actually my driver's ed teacher, which was great. It was a great experience. I learned a lot, and you're right. There's a lot of people that can't afford that education course. It's getting harder and harder to obtain, and we're getting fewer licensed drivers on the roadways, I believe. And this is a great option, and I think also all the other ideas that you came forward with are amazing. So thank y'all for all you do. Appreciate it.
Councilor Ellison.
Thank you. Thank you, Abby and Melina. Really great presentation. This is my fourth one I've seen from KAYAC. I always look forward to this particular meeting to see the capstone project and hear more about what you've all been doing throughout the year. It's always fun to occasionally sit in on you all's meetings over the past few years. It's really interesting to hear you all debate things and come to a conclusion on what you all want to do. I even say there would be some things that the adults could learn from how you all conduct your business. I've always been very proud of you all and the work that you all have accomplished. Just specifically about this year's capstone project, I think it's a great one. You put a big smile on my face when I saw what it was. I second what Councilmember Rizzo said. I think all four of them are really needed and would be improvement on the curriculum. And I give major kudos to you all for wanting to improve that. And even as you said, Abby, it may not immediately impact yourselves or the grade after you, or maybe even those that are all in the school right now, but in the long term, what that does. And that's the mark of a leader. And this group has always shown those leadership skills. I will jump particularly into a couple of things. Well, one, I will say I love the financial literacy part. Being in banking and finance myself, that is something that every community needs. So I particularly like that one. One of the things that I noticed that you all said in your presentation was that not only did you survey the advisory panel, but you also surveyed residents. And I just wanted to hear a little bit about y'all's methodology when you all did that part.
Yes, of course. We mostly targeted students and educators just because they would actually be the ones participating in these programs. But we also got parents' feedback. Most of the surveys, we got around 150 people to fill out. So it wasn't that many, but it was still a good amount just to see what the general thought process was.
Yeah, and because our membership is from all three schools, we got all three campuses to participate, which is awesome.
That is awesome. And actually, that's not that bad of a number because we do citywide surveys as well. So we know how much of a struggle that can be. But that's a pretty solid number of feedback there. So thank you all again. Love the presentation, love the work you all do, and I know the council is always excited to continue to support the work that KAYAC does. I want to thank each and every one of the members, and I want to thank our staff liaisons as well, Howard, there for their continued effort and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellison.
Thank you. Councilman Bradshaw.
I'll just piggyback off of what everybody else has already said. Thank you so much for your ambition and taking these leadership positions seriously to create positive impact, especially, education is big and some reform is definitely, needed, without going into further detail. So I just want to thank you so much for all of your work this year.
Thank you.
Councilor Tobias.
Same here. Just want to say thank you, what everybody's been saying about this group, and appreciate all your hard work. I like the idea of the life classes, especially when it comes to finance and etiquette and things like that. Some of these things, I'm sure that a lot of young adults, as they are going into college, they're going to need to know finances, like Councilman Ellison has brought up, and also learning life skills as well. I'm sure that's what you're teaching as well, or you guys are talking amongst each other about. So that's good to have that conversation. So, but then again, thank you for all that you've done, and congratulations on your senior year and your success in the future.
Thank you so much.
Councilmember Flores-Kell.
I just want to commend you girls for standing up there and being able to talk. I have stood where you stood and been so nervous, and you guys are naturals. So I'm going to encourage you to continue doing what you're doing, because this is just one little small change. But if you continue to do that, even if you don't change the situation yourself, you may spark the brain that does. So always continue to do the right thing. And kudos to your great speaking skills, because to this day, I'm still working on mine.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank y'all so much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a good night.
Don't go too far. We want to take a quick photo if y'all come here. Council, do y'all mind coming in on the dais? Y'all
Sure.
come down and just getting together?
Short people up front.
All right. 1, 2, 3. This is really awkward. 1 second. There we go. Much better. Thank you.
All right, next up, introduction of Gary Stubbins, Building Inspector. Mr. Koontz.
More and more good news. So following the retirement of our longtime building official last October, we did a search for someone to replace that role. And we are joined this evening by Mr. Gary Stubbins, longtime building official elsewhere, and he has returned to Texas to serve the city of Kyle. So I'll let him introduce himself.
Good evening, council. How you doing tonight? My name is Gary Stubbins. As Mr. Koontz has said, I come from a long history of being a building official. I worked up in Massachusetts for about 15 years, and I decided to apply for the position down here and was lucky enough to receive it. And I'm looking forward to working for the city of Kyle. I'm very excited about it and serving the community.
We've got plenty of work.
It's very, very busy. It's amazing how much work is going on around here, how much building.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for coming. Anybody have any comments for Mr. Stubbins? Councilmember Flores-Kell.
I'd just like to say thank you for applying. And thank you for coming down here. Massachusetts is quite a long ways. So I'm sure they're going to be a little more advanced than us.
It's quite an opportunity. I spent about a third of my life down in Texas. I actually was in the service at Fort Hood, and then I went home for a while and then came back down here. I worked in Formosa Plastics. I lived in Victoria, Texas for several years, and ended up going back up north to get my degree, and then in mechanical engineering, and then decided after 22 years up there, decided to come back here. I have a lot of friends. I have family here, 3 grandkids, which I'm going to go see next weekend. Hadn't seen them because of the COVID in a little over a year and a half. I haven't even seen the youngest one yet.
Well, I also want to thank you for your service. My dad was a fellow serviceman,
Great,
so
thank you very much.
thank you very
Appreciate
much.
that.
Councilor Rizzo.
I'd just like to welcome you back to Texas.
Yeah.
Welcome
Thank you very
to warmer temperatures. And I hope you didn't shovel too much snow while you're up north, but
I did a lot, and that's one of the reasons I'm down here. I mean, I do like the Four Seasons, but
Yeah.
in all honesty, it does get tiring sometimes.
definitely, we're glad that you applied, and we're glad to have you a part of Team Kyle, so welcome back to Texas.
Great, thank you very much. Like I said, I really appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to serving the community.
Anyone
Here
else?
to make it happen.
Thank you, sir. Welcome aboard.
Great,
Welcome
thank you.
aboard. Yeah,
Welcome,
thank
Gary.
you.
Awesome, thank you very much.
All right, next up, CIP, road projects, and consent agenda presentation. Mr. Barba.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Leon Barba, City Engineer. It's not working. Why does it always do this with me? There you go. All right, first project, Burleson Street. As you know, we're still trying to work on closing out this project. Visited with our project manager today. She's still waiting for the as-built, and they have one more change order to go through on that project. And she's also having a discussion with the contractor about a certain parking area that she thinks we need to get a credit on. So hopefully she'll win on that particular discussion. But she's still trying to get them to wrap it up. The Windy Hill Street Drainage Project, we're at about 58% complete. As you know, we have traffic driving on the south side. They're trying to wrap up that north half. And they've got all their precast structures that have been placed. They still have some head walls to put in. They're trying to prepare that road bed subgrade, but as you can tell, it's been quite a bit wet weather out there, so it's slowing them down. We still think we're going to have about 4 more months before we complete that north half and try to wrap the project up by the end of November. Southside Wastewater Project. If you'll notice this picture, you'll notice that all that water in that particular creek, thank goodness the contractor's already laid the pipe in that section, so we don't have to worry about waiting for that area to dry up. So you can tell he's on the north side, the south side of that creek, and he's heading up to, in front of TDCJ, heading back towards the south to where he'll make an ultimate connection with the County Road 158, where he stopped before. We still have about 3 more sections to do on this particular project. So we're estimating maybe 6 to 9 months before he wraps this project up. On the wastewater treatment plant expansion project, we're about 54% complete. Again, the rain has not helped us on this particular project. They're still continuing to work on schedule, at the best as they can. They're going to continue working on Saturdays to continue to try to stay on that schedule. So we do expect to have this completed and ready to go March of 2022. One other thing I want to mention, the dewatering design that they've been working on, which is the belt press that we've been asking for. As the design's wrapped up, they're having final reviews on that. So we'll possibly be looking at a change order for that particular improvement there at the plant. They're still working on a little bit of the concrete on this photo. You can see the water up on the upper right. It's still there, but it is a pretty wet site at this point in time. Button Creek Interceptor, we're about 45% complete on that particular project. Let me go back one more slide. I wanted to mention about the fourth bullet. One of the things that the wastewater treatment plant project needs to do, we did plan to tie in Button Creek Interceptor to the plant, so part of the work for the plant includes them tying into that pipe that we lay there. So it's very critical that we tie in that Button Creek Interceptor to the plant. So we just had our meeting on that to make sure everybody was coordinated and knew what they were doing and when to expect the work to be done. They should start on that project hopefully within about two months, I think. And back on the Button Creek Interceptor, hopefully in about 2 to 3 weeks they'll start clearing so they can do a bore underneath the Plum Creek area. That's about a month project, and that's where they'll be laying the pipes so that the treatment plant can tie into them. Hopefully I didn't confuse you on that. Well, site number 4, on the agenda we have item number 12. That's a change order. I believe the amount's about $50,000. That's for 2 projects that they're going to be doing for us. One, on the existing water tower that we have here, that particular logo is going to be removed and replaced with a larger one. And then we're also going to place a new logo on the north side of the tower. And then on the downtown elevated, we're going to remove the overflow piping, and we're also going to remove the existing sign, the lettering that's there, and replace that also with block lettering too. Oops. Old Post Road, visited with the superintendent for the county. Again, the rains kind of held them up. They got all their base in. They were hoping to place oil so they could start paving, hopefully next week, but they're going to have to wait for the material to dry out. And then after that dries out, then they can put their oil down so they can at least get the first layer of mix on this south end of the project. Elliott Branch Interceptor, there's 2 items on there on the consent agenda, number 9 and 10. These are 2 contracts with RAILPROS. We need to pay them for an observer and for a flagger as we bore underneath the railroad track there on this Elliott Branch project. There's a reclaimed water line and a gravity line that we have to install, and we have to have this contract with them so they can watch our crews as we're working there installing those borings. Consider Ranch Roundabout, approximately 95% complete according to the developer. They should be open Friday or Saturday. Paramount Subdivision also visited with the developer on this one. Again, they were held up because of weather. As soon as it's dry enough, they're going to start putting oil down and getting ready to start paving that. I'm guessing that they're going to be about another 2 to 3 weeks before they can finally open that up. I do want to let council know that there was one particular issue that we faced on this particular project when it came in for design. As you approach the railroad tracks, there's some narrow lanes there. Public Works is going to help me with that. We're going to install some signs warning the motorists. There's narrow lanes there. They are at least 10 feet wide, but I'm going to call it a calming device, traffic calming device, so to speak. But we may get some calls and complaints on that because it is narrow, but it does have at least 10 feet wide lanes in there. So that's an issue I wanted to bring up so that y'all don't get surprised about that. But the reason we didn't try to go wider, according to the railroad, it was going to cost us millions of dollars to move those signals. So the decision was to try to fit in what we could, and we did. We got 10-foot lanes in there, but as you approach it, it does look like it's going to be an issue for you, but it is wide enough for you to get through there.
Yeah, I think 10 feet is fine. Does that also come into play with our quiet zones, future quiet zones?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay.
Yes. We would have liked to have had wider lanes. You know, engineers like the wide lanes. Most of us do anyway. And but because of the issue with the signals and the cost, it was just too expensive to try to move those signals. And one just something that I brought up with the engineers on this project. Typically, you use standard curb and gutter, and I've mentioned this before to other staff, but I asked them to put regular stand-up curb, just the curbing, because most people don't like driving on that pan. They'll veer away from that pan or the gutter, as we call it. So this one just has stand-up curbing in there, so it'll give them the feeling that it's a little bit wider. So that's the reason we have a different curb section there. I'm going to see if I can explain this correctly. On Kyle 57, the easements, this is agenda item number 8. We needed 2 easements from the Kyle 57 development. This is one that's on 150. One was for the transmission line that we needed and a booster pump. And when the developer filed the easements the first time, they were filed incorrectly, and so they had to they refiled 2 new easements. According to the title company, we needed to terminate those first 2, and that's what this item does. We sign off and we terminate those first 2 easements. On the Krug Activity Center, this authorizes the city manager to negotiate with the P.E.C. to remove the overhead structures from the right-of-way in our streets and alleys.
My favorite item.
Yes. And any questions?
Thank you, Leon. Any questions for Leon? Councilman Rizzo.
Just one, just on Casetta Ranch, you said they were at 95% complete, even with the rain. What are we still lacking in that area?
According to what they were telling me, some sidewalk areas and some backfilling.
Okay, and that's pretty much it. I know last week they ran into some issues. Anytime that we have an issue occur with a project like this that we're trying to get done quickly, if there's an issue that arises, I'd like council to be notified on it. So I know that there was some decisions made and council didn't have any input on it. But anytime we're doing a project in this type of timeline, trying to get them done quickly, all the feedback is helpful, especially when we're trying to talk to the public and let them know what the true timelines are.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, just to reflect on that, the reason why is we have residents in that area that have, of course, being a dead horse here, having delays, traffic issues, and all that. So as much real-time information we can get, you actually have some people knocking on my door wanting to get updates. So the more we can get this finalized and the more we can be more up to date, even if it's a daily thing, the better. So that way we can just keep our residents in the loop going forward. I know we're going to have more projects like this, but if you see the emails that we have, just know that we're trying to give our residents the most updated real-time information as much as possible. That's all it is. So, but again, Leon, thank you for your help trying to get all this resolved. I know this has been going on for many months, but I think we're finally, hopefully now at the end of the road on this. And you said the latest, it would be opened up by Saturday, Friday, Saturday,
We're
depending on the
anticipating
weather.
Friday, but we better say Saturday just in case.
Just say Saturday. Okay. That sounds great. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Leon. Councilor Ellison, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, just talking about the roundabout real quick. Two things. One, the middle part, what are we anticipating going in there? And then two, could we get a list to council on the additions and differences that were done from the second go at on this roundabout, essentially?
Councilmember, I'm not aware of what's going to go in the center part of it. I know the developer had planned some greenery and things like that, but I don't know exactly what they're going to be putting in there. But we'll find out. We'll find out, and then we can give you a list of the changes that were made from the original design.
Perfect. Thank you. The other thing was on Old Post Road. That's what it was. So I know y'all are working on the south side there of Old Post Road. The right-of-way acquisition negotiations are still there at that 158 in Old Post Road. Is that where the right-of-way negotiations are still happening?
That's correct, Councilmember. We're going back and forth with the owner right now. He's responded to a schematic that I sent him to make sure that we included everything that he wanted us to do in that area. So I just need to respond to him and assure him that we're going to provide the things that he's asked for. And hopefully, once I get that approval from him, then we're going to try to get the paperwork done quickly as we can so we can straighten out that intersection. And then there's
right. So I guess y'all have kind of been...
And we're also working
go
with the church also. We need some back slope easements, and we're working with the church on that too, but we don't think that's going to hold us up.
Okay, cool. Well, that's all good to know. So essentially, y'all been working on the south side of it, but north of the end of 158 until y'all have the right-of-way negotiations done. And okay, that's just what I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions for Leon? Thank you, Leon. All right, next up, consent agenda, items 7 through 14.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda items 1 through 13.
7 through 14?
7 through 13, my apologies.
I'll second that.
Through 14.
7 to
Are you trying to pull 14?
Correct.
Second, 7 through 13, second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Ellison, seconded by Councilmember Rizzo, that we approve agenda items number 7 through 13. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed. Motion carries 7-0. Next up, agenda item number 14. Authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement with P.E.C. To relocate overhead power lines around the premises of the Krug Activity Center. This is Mr. Barba's item as well. Mr. Ellison, I guess you pulled it. So.
Just one quick question. Yes, one quick question. So I appreciate the backup material and the explanation on there as well. The cost range was from $1.5 to $2.5 million. A preliminary estimate with P.E.C. to relocate some of these poles. What would, I guess this is a question for Scott, what would be the funding source for moving forward with that?
Council, this is Scott Sellers, City Manager for the record. At this point, it's just an agreement to begin the process. Right now, we haven't identified a set funding source for this. Could be from the general fund, most likely.
Okay, so we would have to budget for it in a future.
That's correct.
Future agenda.
That's correct.
Would that be this upcoming fiscal year or following?
So far, we haven't had the conversation with P.E.C. on when they would expect the funding. We would clearly want to start removing some of those poles as part of the Kyle Hartson Park project. So I think we could start moving those, again, August, September as part of this project, but the bulk of the funding would be this next fiscal year.
Okay. But essentially, we're directing to move forward with that, and then we'll have to just commit to the funding when that time comes.
Yeah, the direction for this item is really to give us the ability to enter into the agreement with P.E.C. and the funding dollar amount will be part of that item. So we will bring back the final agreement to council when it's ready. This just gives us the direction to move forward and negotiate it.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other comments? Motion?
Motion to approve item 14.
All right, it's been moved by Councilman Rizzo, seconded by Councilmember Flores Kale that we approve agenda item number 14. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, next up, agenda item number 15, first reading, an ordinance amending Chapter 53 of the City of Kyle, Texas for the purpose of rezoning approximately 1.63 acres of land from construction manufacturing to retail services for property located at 1050 Bunton Creek Road. This item has a public hearing. Mr. Koontz, go ahead.
Who keeps moving this? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a request to rezone a little over an acre and a half that's located on Bunton, just east of Philomena. It's right next to the bread basket, if you're familiar with the intersection. Going to try and share my screen so I can have a visual aid. So what you can see there is a vicinity map. Like I said, this is located on Bunton Creek, just east of Philomena Drive. Between Daisy and Philomena. 1.63 acres, currently zoned CM, but it is not developed at all. Property owner is seeking to downzone it, voluntarily downzone it to RS for retail service uses. So it went to P&Z about a week ago. They voted unanimously 5-0 at the time of the vote to approve the request as submitted.
All right, thank you, Mr. Koontz. This item has a public hearing. Unless there are objections, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing now. Seeing none, the public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and speak on this item? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. It is now closed. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Mr. Koontz? Councilor Ellison.
I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item 15 as written.
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved by Councilor Ellison, seconded by Councilor Tobias. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
I did have a question. Does this area have wastewater lines?
Most certainly. Wastewater availability on Bunton, east of Philomena, next to the bread basket, that new section they just rebuilt. Yeah, there is. It's on the, yeah.
You're talking about that open space next to the existing.
Yep, yep.
We discussed it on the backside.
Okay, so they have all the utilities they're gonna need?
Correct.
Okay. I'm gonna be honest, it kind of makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm very familiar with this area. It's all warehouse. Everything about it is warehouse except for that gas station. So, It looks like under the super regional node, it talks about intent. The purpose of the super regional node is to capture employment opportunities and create a commercial destination within Kyle. So I don't know if an area of 1.6 is going to create or add to a commercial destination or capture employment. So I'm kind of concerned about that. And I also, again, I know I talk about this a lot, but without a comprehensive plan, it makes it difficult to decide if we should be adjusting these super regional nodes and adding an RS to an area that is supposed to be warehouse.
Councilmember Rizzo, you have thoughts?
Just really quickly, I'm pretty familiar with the area. I know we have a lot of warehouse in the area, but I know some of the things that we're missing are some more amenities for the people that live in the neighborhoods just a little bit east of there. And I think anything that we can bring towards giving them some options is always something to think about. As a neighborhood, you don't want to just be surrounded by warehouses. You'd like to have some amenities as well, so I can support this, definitely.
Councilor Ellison.
Thank you. So one big thing for me is the down zoning. So every use that's allowed in RS is also allowed in construction manufacturing. And the fact that an applicant, it's very rare that we get down zoning, and particularly for a node, and I can certainly agree that we, once again, y'all have heard me say it, about the comprehensive plan, but when we're talking about a node, something like this, retail services, y'all have also heard me say it before. These are the things that I've heard from residents all across the city, and they always point to that 2770 and soon to be Veterans Drive area, where that node of retail type services where they can get gas, they can shop, and different things like that. And I think that's a similar type thing we're trying to, or I would like to see done. Same thing up at BB and Dacey, and so on and so forth. So for that reason, I think that this is a strong rezoning classification. There's RS right next to it with the breadbasket. And like I said, all the uses that are allowed in RS are also allowed in construction manufacturing, but it makes the scope really exclusive to just those things. And for me, that's a big difference.
Councilor Bradshaw.
I agree with everything that Councilmember Rizzo said. I was actually really excited for both agenda item 15 and 16, and just to have those sort of amenities and businesses and services available, rather than people having to commute, more than 5 or 10 minutes out of their way.
Councilor Tobias.
Right in that area where the breadbasket is, there's a lot of foot traffic that goes through there, especially with the people that live in Steeplechase. So that's why I'm supporting on this, because I see a lot of people walk to the store and they have to go all the way up to the top of the hill to either go to Walmart or to Walgreens or in that area. So if there is a business that is interested in that little small area, it could keep some of those people in there, especially when I see some students walking to Lehman. If there's a little retail shop or whatever that's there that could come in there, that would really benefit in that area. Especially, like I said, there's a lot of foot traffic that's there. So I think this retail space, downgrading to a CM to an RS would really benefit in that area right there.
Any other comments, thoughts? All right, we have a motion on the table. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-1. All right, next up, agenda item number 16, first reading, an ordinance amending Chapter 53 of the City of Kyle, Texas for the purpose of assigning original zoning to approximately 1.105 acres of land from agriculture to retail services for property located within the 1800 block of Goforth and Hayes. This item has a public hearing. Mr. Koontz, go ahead.
This is another request to apply inaugural zoning. If you look at the screen, I think you can see my cursor. You can. So this flag-shaped lot was recently just annexed by this group. Actually, this evening it went through on the consent. And the portion that's highlighted in yellow is being subdivided away from the parent parcel, and this is the piece of land that they seek to rezone. They want this to be RS for their commercial purpose. and the staff has seen fit to support it, as did the Planning and Zoning Commission roughly a week ago. It is located again in a local node that centers on Bunton Creek, Bunton Lane, and Goforth. Trying to get down here to find out exactly what the yeah, it was 5-0. It was another unanimous vote in front of P&Z. So I can make myself
All right,
available
thank you,
for
Mr.
questions.
Koontz. If there are no objections, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Seeing none, the public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and speak on this item? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. It is now closed. Quite the interesting parcel, considering our history. Mr. Ellison.
I'd like to, well, Mr. Koontz mentioned it earlier. The only hang-up was the annexation, but similar type reasoning as the agenda item previously. I move to approve the agenda item as written.
Second.
It's been motioned by Councilmember Ellison, seconded by Councilmember Rizzo. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Tobias.
All right, I'll bring up exactly what Councilmember Flores Kale. Do we have any water utilities in that section of that area? Any water or connections on Goforth? Because I know over there by Breadbasket, you're right in a neighborhood and you're right down certain roads, but this is a little bit further out. I know there's the base. I guess there's a baseball field out there.
There is indeed. This is the batting cages.
Batting cages.
Does the Jansen property have water, wastewater?
I'll let you talk to the expert.
Stumped you.
Let me talk a little about the wastewater. That's going to be eventually tied into the Bunton Creek Interceptor, so the wastewater will be there. It is an RCCN, I believe, but they don't have wastewater today. But as you know, we're still working on the Bunton Creek Interceptor. So
Okay.
my understanding is they'll build a septic system or get whatever they have to from the county to be able to provide septic systems.
Okay.
Until
from
we
the
get the
county, so
line
it'll be
in.
coming from the county.
The water's coming from Goforth?
Goforth water. Okay.
So I guess my question, Leon, would, to follow up on that, is how big is the lot? 1.5,
1.1.
1.1? So it's 1.1? How large a facility are they building, and will they have enough room for to comply with the septic?
I don't know the size of the facility. That's, at this point, this is still just a land use question, not a
Okay.
building question.
That'll
And
come
then
later.
septic can be appropriately sized. Again, that's something that's actually designed and inspected at the county level.
Okay, sounds good. All right, that's kind of what my question was, 'cause I couldn't remember what size the building was. I don't remember if we had something like that, but I was just making sure the lot was large enough to have the drain field needed for a building, but that'll come in as they're designing, correct? All right, thank you, Howard.
Councilmember Flores Kale.
Yeah, I just have a question. Out of curiosity, why would we not wait until the annexation was finished before we rezone?
The annexation was finished earlier on tonight's agenda. This would have been postponed tonight had that not gone through, but now that that's done, we're applying inaugural zoning.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Subject to the various rules and regulations for retail services, including our standards for building and construction and
Yeah, once we apply zoning,
parking, layout.
it's bound just like any other piece of RS zoning anywhere else in the city.
Works for me. All right, anything else? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries 7-0. Next up, agenda item number 17, first reading an ordinance amending Chapter 53 of the City of Kyle, Texas for the purpose of modifying Section 53-893, conditional use permit required in Hays County, Texas. This item also has a public hearing. Mr. Koontz.
A very simple text amendment that seemed to have quite a bit of gravity in front of P&Z about a week ago. We talked about this for probably an hour. So the idea was staff was directed by the P&Z to bring forward a text amendment related to what the city of Kyle terms a conditional use permit. It is actually not a use permit. Typically, these are aesthetic reviews for the development of property or the alteration of property located in any of our various overlay districts. 53-893 is the section in the zoning ordinance that requires these use permits be approved by P&Z prior to construction. And then letter A, numbers 1 and 2, are the triggers for when the permit is required. Staff changed the nature of this section so that the two subparts of 53-893 would be conjoined with the word or instead of the word and, because and would mean that if one or the other condition weren't met, then neither condition would be applicable and there was no oversight required. That's not seen as a good idea, especially in light of the gravity that we apply to our overlays, especially our downtown overlay, our I-35 overlay, and some of the other significant streets that have what we term significant view sheds. We would prefer there be greater oversight in the construction or alteration of structures. So we changed the conjunction to or, so that if you meet either of the two conditions, rather than being required to meet both of the conditions, that your project would come forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission for the review of the aesthetics. By and large, the Planning and Zoning Commission supported the idea, but you'll notice in the staff report that when we talk about, there was a Planning and Zoning Commission amendment, and basically what they wanted to see was expansion of the language in number 2 to better mirror the language in number 1, so it was more clear what work needed to be done that would qualify for oversight on their part. So they had 2 votes that evening. One was to create a motion on which they could vote, and to create the motion was to add the additional language. It was basically a motion that altered the staff recommendation with the simple 2-word amendment and made it much more broad but more specific. And that was approved 4-1. They decided that the expanded language was preferable to the staff's language, which was much shorter. Then later, the idea of enacting that text amendment was again debated, and the amendment itself passed 3-2. The 2 dissenting votes didn't oppose the idea of what we were doing. They preferred that the scope of the project be greatly expanded in verbiage, in locations, in details of architectural structures, details of colors. Basically, it was a step above anything that we were necessarily trying to accomplish with what staff termed to be a simple oversight to close an unfortunate loophole. Staff, I explained to them at the meeting that I didn't want to backdoor into a new ordinance that controlled different places of the city. I wanted to stick with the spirit of the current ordinance until such time that we are able to do a rewrite that's more concerned with Kyle itself and rather than being so much boilerplate. However, at the end of the day, the recommendation was 3-2 to pass the amended ordinance, which is in the staff report around the bottom of the penultimate page of the staff report. So I can make myself available.
Just to be clear, the amendment was 4-1, and then the actual base vote for the changes was 3-2.
Yeah, the idea of the language was expanded, and that was supported 4-1. And then whether or not to implement the expanded language was decided upon in favor 3-2.
I don't think we can put color in there. I'm pretty sure that's against statute, right? They just changed the law that we're not allowed to regulate on the basis of color, exterior color, correct?
Paige Sign, City Attorney for the
That'd
record.
be the same for materials as well?
Anything that's authorized in a building code, in one of the last iterations of the building code for the last 3 years, the city cannot regulate. So if it's authorized in a building code, then the city cannot regulate that. So that typically covers colors and building materials.
So in our overlay districts, if someone wants to make their building hot pink and we don't want that, do we have statutory authority to restrict their ability to make their building hot pink.
There may be some exceptions that would apply, that you could look at that would apply, but as far as adopting new regulations, the state law does not let you do that.
So have you looked at what the amendment that P&Z proposed was? I know it's,
Yeah.
yeah, I got you.
I'm looking.
Take a look at it. We have a public hearing. So if there are no objections, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and speak on this item? Going with the long pregnant pause to give Paige a little more time.
Oh, you're waiting for me.
No, I'm not. I'm just giving you time. Yeah.
Thank you, yeah. What they're doing here is
All right, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close. The public hearing is now closed. Agenda item number 16, as an FYI, was passed unanimously. Does anyone object to that item being finally passed? All right, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and call that item finally passed. As Paige is looking up the text amendment to make sure that, to weigh in on whether or not the color section that they added. Does anybody have any comments on the general proposal here?
We're also reviewing materials, correct color and materials.
I'd like to mention that I appreciate the effort. I think we all know what we're trying to avoid, and I appreciate them attempting to kind of rectify or fix that situation.
We're okay with maybe like a dark red, like a maroon, right? But once it gets to a certain, like we'll have a color palette. We'll put a line on the color palette. We'll put that in the ordinance. You have to be right of this line.
Yeah.
You know, and if it fades to the left of the line, then they're in violation. We'll have to push them back to the right.
Yeah, you know, it's just trying to avoid, some, colors that could be offensive, some type of orange or something.
Yeah.
So,
Some type of orange. That's right. Yeah. If there's orange, it has to be Tennessee orange. Yeah, not UT orange.
No burn orange.
That's right. I like that. Table it.
I really,
You want to table and look into it? Any reason why we couldn't bring it back next meeting, Howard? You have a weird look on your face, like that's not.
That's my face. It always looks like that.
Table it.
Howard, I just want to say that I appreciate y'all trying to bring this forward. I know everybody got the phone call when I saw something here that bothered me, and I appreciate y'all really working, diving into this. Hopefully, we can resolve it and come up with a solution. But thank y'all for putting in the work.
Just give you a little time to look at it. All right. Any objection to tabling this for now? We'll bring it back once Paige has had some time to think on it. All right. We're gonna move on. All right. Next up is agenda item number 18, second reading. An ordinance of the City of Kyle, Texas, adopting an amendment to the city's 2010 comprehensive plan, providing for the amendment of the plan by including M2 and M3 to the Newtown Community Land Use District as a conditional use. We discussed this at the last meeting. There's no longer a public hearing. It's just, it's here because it was not unanimous. So is there anyone that has any questions or thoughts to add? If not, I'll motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Bradshaw. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 5-2. All right, agenda items number 19 through 24. We're gonna actually move those back, give us time to go into executive session to discuss some of those a little bit longer. And if there are no objections, I'm gonna move to agenda item number 25. Sandra? Okay, number 25, consider approving a resolution authorizing amendments to the personnel policy.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I bring to you the policy for amendment. This is Sandra Duran, Human Resources Director, for the record. As we face our challenges in hiring and looking through these sections on how to get creative and not tie our hands to certain policies that we have, we are recommending the changes that you see redlined in your packet. If you want me to go through those.
A basic overview is that as it relates to our pool.
Correct.
Personnel.
Opening our pool to be able to recruit more without being tied to certain policies. So for example, the one that has the most change is section 205 in nepotism. We have that we are not allowed to hire anybody that's related to the city manager or the council members, but that also includes seasonal temporary positions. And in talking to other cities and going through the challenges of hiring, different cities are recommending that we open that up, that because the summer jobs are just about 2 to 3 months long, that we can open it up to hire to anybody that's related to the departments or to the city manager or to the council members. We've had in the past several relatives apply for these positions, and they were not allowed to. But their family members are active in the community, they're in KAYAC, they're in different organizations that help out, and we feel that they would add a lot of value in being a part of Team Kyle.
That makes sense to me. Sandra, does anybody have any thoughts on that? Councilor Rizzo.
And that would be temporary positions, correct?
Correct. It will just be seasonal, so for pool and camp.
Okay, sounds good.
Yes.
And we're struggling right now to fill those positions.
We are. Currently, we have 12 positions in the lifeguard, and we only have 2 that we offered, and they're going through the pre-screenings as of right now, but only have 2 people that are interested in lifeguarding is not enough.
I know if it's a family member, we'd probably hold them to a higher standard, so you'd probably get a
It's
really
like the
good
coach's
employee.
son, you know?
Yeah, it's like the coach's
Yes.
son, definitely.
It's the hardest.
We're like, I will call your parent.
Yeah,
Right.
The city would probably benefit from something like that, because, you know, if it was my kid, I'd be like, you better show up on time.
Yes.
If you're on time, you're 15 minutes late. That's the way I
Correct, as
see
a
it.
representation of.
Definitely. Thank you, Sandra.
Any other discussion on this item? Motions?
I think that's a great idea that you really look into that, because it gives somebody that is a family member or that wants to employ, they know the expectations and that need to be with the job and so forth. So, and it helps again with the positions being filled, and we can be able to recruit some family members or just people in general. That would have really helped. So, thank you.
And I think that also teaches them public service. So if the council member only serves, a small amount of years, then they can look as being in the career of public service and then later on apply for the city of Kyle for the Parks Director position or something bigger, that they can want later in the future. The rest of it is just cleaning up the language that doesn't apply to us any longer. So I took the opportunity to do that since we were opening up the section of hiring and recruiting.
Does
And I
anybody
can
have
go
any
through
questions
if you
about
need me
the text amendments that are proposed?
No, but I do want to say thank you for cleaning that up. I mean, while you're in there, you might as well just make it perfect. So thank you for being proactive.
Thank you.
Was that a motion?
Absolutely. I would like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 25,
A
please.
second?
It's been motioned by Councilmember Flores Kale, seconded by Councilmember Tobias, that we approve agenda item number 25. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next up, agenda item number 26, approve the City of Kyle's voluntary commitment to reducing particulate matter, PM 2.5 emissions within the Austin, Round Rock, Georgetown Metropolitan Statistical Area. Councilman Rizzo.
So this is an item that we were bringing forward because we thought we had to have proclamation. Turns out that CapCog came back and said we didn't need one, but one of the things that we did was turn in a list of recommendations that the city would probably adhere to. One of them was trying to reduce the dust at construction sites, and by using water to mitigate that. I have been a victim of a bad construction site. We had one near my house a couple of years ago, and my yard was covered with about half an inch of dust. And I thought that was unacceptable, but I didn't want to see anybody else go through it. So there's something that I think as a city we could try to implement and adhere to. But I've got Kathy Rooker on the line just to explain a little bit more.
Hello, Mayor, council members, Kathy Raker, Stormwater Program for the record. Again, Councilmember Rizzo had already said that the Clean Air Coalition had actually asked its members to look at this list and pick what each entity could voluntarily comply with. And so they gave us kind of a cheat sheet. Of course, as a city, we could always implement additional measures. However, I went through this table and I circled what I felt the city could easily commit to reduce particulate matter within Kyle to help contribute to the overall air quality of our area. If y'all had any questions about a particular one, I'll be more than happy to discuss it.
One of the things we did also as a city is burn banning within the city, and that's to help the overall air quality in Kyle. I know that people with asthma and with other health issues are probably thankful for that, but the more steps that we can take as a city to benefit everybody else being able to enjoy the outdoors is always a step forward that I really would encourage us all to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there any comments or questions? So did I hear correctly, we actually don't need to vote on this, or we do? We don't have to vote. Okay. Yeah, anybody have any comments on it, just in general?
I love the idea.
Thank you, Councilman Rizzo, for bringing this forward. As somebody who suffers from asthma, it's very important that we follow as much of the regulations to be able to have this emissions in place. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
I just want to say, Councilmember Rizzo, thank you for bringing this forward. I enjoyed my time on this CAPCOG, and you have taken this bull by the horn to continue to bring initiatives from your service on that council. And I certainly appreciate you always bringing these forward and helping us move the needle. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson.
Councilor Flores.
Just want to, like everybody else, we want to say thank you. Anything that makes our air just a little bit more cleaner, I will get behind every time. So thank you.
All right, if there's no other comments, we'll move on. All right, next up, agenda item number 27, discussion of implementation of Proposition F, Police Department Oversight. Councilor Ellison.
Thank you. So I'm going to try to keep this, try to move through this. I have 8 slides, but I wanted to be thorough and bring this presentation forward to the council in order to ask for some assistance in next steps. So next slide here. So, yes, next slide. So as many of you all remember, and for our residents that are watching, we had a number of propositions on last November's ballot, one of which was Proposition F, which had the language that you see highlighted essentially from police department procedures on down, the rest that's highlighted. The part in A that is not highlighted, that stayed in from the charter language that was already in there. So the voters reviewed and voted on the additional language that you see highlighted. So I'm just going to read through it real quick, just for the sake of folks that might not be able to see this very well. There shall be a police department to preserve order and protect the residents and property. The chief of police shall be responsible for the administration of the police department and shall evaluate and supervise the department and all its employees. All such evaluations and actions shall be subject to review and modification by the city manager. So all of that stayed the same. And just to refresh those in council, one of the concerns, or citizens rather, one of the concerns was that the change of the evaluations and actions over the oversight of the police chief, that still remained with the city manager, and council was unified in that thought process. The rest here that was added: police department procedures and policies shall be subject to review and modification by the city council, something that could already been done. We just codified it in the charter. And then B, the city of Kyle Police Department shall collaborate with a committee established by the City Council to have oversight over the development of standard operating policies and strategies, providing timely data sharing and deploying resources that aim to, 1, protect all citizens, businesses, and property within the city, promote transparency within the police department to the community, to also include data sharing communication in the forms of in-person briefings, news publications, and social media on a quarterly basis. And number 3, reduce crime by increasing positive community engagement and promoting cooperation with all citizens through training, education, and community policing models. Much of that you see from 1 to 3 is pretty standard, and many of those things have already been going on in some capacity already with our police department. We're just codifying it. It just got codified within the charter. And the big one there I put in bold was and adding social media on a quarterly basis. So that was the new part. And then increasing positive community engagement and promoting cooperation with all citizens through training, education, and community policing models, which was also standout language from the charter amendment. Finally, annually, the police chief or designee shall provide the full city council with a comprehensive report about police department operations, crime statistics, training initiatives, and other information requested by the city council. I want to stop and just say, once again, something that could have already been done, already probably was being done in some capacity. I know the chief is always happy to provide us reports and information, and quite frankly does. And so once again, this was just putting the expectation in the charter and then subsequently through the ordinance that everyone has that expectation. You all will hear me throughout the rest of my presentation talk about the 3 prongs. The 3 prongs are the city administration, including the council, citizens, second prong, and then the third prong being Kyle PD. And so a big part of this was in putting this language there and the expectation there in the charter and then in the future ordinance. All 3 of those prongs are aware of what the expectations are. So everybody is on the same page of what will be upcoming, the quarterly information sharing, and then the annual comprehensive report. Everybody has that same expectation in all 3 prongs. And then finally, the last part is the city council shall adopt an ordinance implementing the terms of this subsection. For those that might not have been on council and for our residents as well, we kept the language in the charter broad on purpose when we were having these discussions last August, and that we knew that we would, if passed, then we would hammer down the specifics and details through an ordinance, and that would be the task of the council to do. Next slide. So the next few slides, I'm going to go over what I've gathered from researching various oversight and citizen review panels throughout the country and reading various materials that are out there concerning police oversight or citizen review boards and various different things of that similar nature. So I just wanted to go through from that research what I found to be most of the pros and then the cons of that, and then we'll talk about the next steps from there. So some of the pros I gathered was community members seem overwhelmingly supportive of the idea. For those that don't know, 77% of those that voted in this last November's election, which was our highest voter turnout in city's history, 77% of those voters voted to approve this charter amendment language. Citizen involvement in the complaint process can help increase trust, transparency, and accountability. KPD takes complaints seriously, conduct thorough investigations, and have nothing to hide. So all of this would be, as I wanted to take a moment and say, well, this is just part of what we've had in the discussions, and I'll get to that here in just a moment. Discipline decisions remain with the chief of police. Citizen ideas and input on policies is valuable to the organization. This is being created at a time when there is not a crisis driving it. So we're not in a heightened sense of anything that's gone on in our city or in our community. Certainly there are things going on across the nation, but I believe that the spirit of the vote last November and where we are at this point in the early summer, there's nothing heightened that is causing any kind of emotional reaction or response to get anything done. This is just an opportunity for us to build a stronger bond between those three prongs. Next slide. The council appointed committee can reduce concerns of the public that their complaints may be ignored. Another pro is promotes the goals of community policing, which was outlined in the charter and approved by the voters. Demonstrates police department's concerns for police conduct to community members. Citizen committee members are required to be residents of Kyle. This is a recommendation, not necessarily outlined in the charter, but from one of my research of citizen review boards and oversight panels and various things of that nature across the country, there's been a mixed bag of some that include residents of that city and some that don't. Just from my research and reviewing these materials, it would be a recommendation from what I've read and feedback from law enforcement agencies on those oversight committees and review boards that this committee be made up, if there are going to be citizens upon it, be made up of residents of that jurisdiction. Next slide. Some of the cons that I identified: personnel resources costs for effective board support. What kind of supplementary materials, resources would they need for this board, and not even just the board, but anything that the law enforcement agency, Kyle PD in this instance, would need in order to comply with their expectations of not only the administration but of the community. Citizen review boards in other communities have been divisive, so something we want to be cognizant of. There's the potential for intentional or accidental release of private data. We must remain aware of parameters and prohibitions defined by data privacy laws. So something to keep in mind as well as we create the ordinance. Next bullet point is makeup of the board can have an impact on the effectiveness. Talent, fairness, personalities, etc. are all things to keep in mind when creating this ordinance, and then the committee that the council would appoint. There's potential for board members with personal agendas or a vendetta. So we're looking at ways on how to minimize that or eradicate that from the board, because we want just objectivity as much as possible. Next slide. Last two cons, I believe. Potential cons. Citizen committee reviews and recommendations may promote police policies that cannot or are too difficult to be implemented. This is really important. And the inability to implement recommendations could degrade the public view of the agency. When we're creating this ordinance and when we're appointing the review board and throughout the process, it's important for us to remain vigilant and cognizant of the recommendations and reviews that the committee makes, and that it's something that the police policies are able to implement. We don't want to create a bar so high, even if the greatest efforts by our chief and our police department to meet all those expectations and make it unattainable for them. And then we're going to end up in a way degrading the public view and perhaps even future council members' view of our law enforcement agency. And that certainly isn't the goal with this. Same thing on the other end of the spectrum. Certainly a large swath of our citizens voted for this charter amendment. There are expectations of that it is not something soft, for lack of a better term, or doesn't meet those expectations. So we have to find a way in the middle, and I'll talk more about that here in the next slides. Last con here, we have Police Association. I have a question mark on this one. Police Association opposed to the Ordinance Review Committee. I'm not saying that that's a fact. I'm not saying that I know that or anything, but that could potentially be a con from the research and reviewing the other communities across the country that sometimes did come up. I'm not certainly saying that about Kyle Law Enforcement Association. This is just from the general research and review of boards and committees across the country.
Well, I think they were officially opposed, correct? I mean, so.
Well, yeah, since you brought that up, Mary, yes, through some, I think there were some initial misunderstandings of it. For example, one of the items I mentioned earlier about changing, there was a misunderstanding that the charter amendment would change who the police chief would report to, that being the council. I'm not sure how that came about, but that was incorrect, and we were able to talk through that and show that that wasn't the case with this charter amendment. Another large portion of the pushback was, I think there is just the fact that there's some unknowns about it. I think that caused some consternation within the association. Hopefully, and I'll get to this here in these next couple of slides, by bringing all three of those prongs together, we are able to get buy-in and input and support, and at least some amount of that a fair amount of input was given from all three parties in order to make this something that we could all be a part of. So that's why, you know, I wanted to hold off on an official lack of support from the association, because I think it's important as we create this ordinance and throughout the process that we engage the police association as much as possible. And hopefully throughout that process, we get a strong partner in wanting to help bolster this as much as possible. Early ideas on this is hiring a data analyst and a harvesting position for KPD. This was one of the things that we've already talked about on our May 1st first budget workshop, and including a position in our PD to do just this. And I hope to get the council's support for this. This is something that was a discussion that I alluded to earlier. I've already met with both chief and captain in creating this presentation. This was months ago, actually. And then I've also met with President Cleary and Lieutenant, oh man, I'm blanking right now.
Griffith.
But we met, Griffith, yes, how could I forget Griffith? Griffith, and had some great conversation and back and forth on this. And so that's this very first one, this hiring a data analyst and harvesting position, was one of those recommendations that came from those discussions. And I was all aboard for it, because one of the things we talked about in those discussions was right now it is highly incumbent on Lieutenant Griffith and others to do that data analysis and gathering and present that to us. We want our law enforcement officers continue to do their duties. We know they have a lot on their plate. So transitioning this data analysis and harvesting and putting all these things that we are talking about in the charter amendment, and then we'll talk about ultimately in the ordinance, for a position to help get all this information that the chief will end up presenting, and not having our officers and chief and captain spending time doing all that would free them up a lot and make the end product a lot better, because that person that would be their sole focus, is doing that. And so that was something that was requested in our May 1st agenda workshop, and hopefully we can continue that throughout the summer and put that in the final budget. Next bullet point here: upgrades, resources, and software, et cetera, to improve the ease of access and use for all parties involved. This is and I'm blanking on the name. Scott, you could probably help me with this, but the software that we were talking about incorporating, that is used statewide. It's very common and very popular. But this was dealing with the complaint and compliment process. We did have 3 awesome compliments this week, just yesterday, I believe. Officer Leathers, Officer Michelson, and Officer Pamplona, I believe. So major kudos to them, and I wanted to take a second and give them a shout out publicly for their work in getting praise. And we certainly know that citizens will praise. We see it in as consumers in Yelp and Google reviews. When something has compelled somebody so much that they compliment, we want to know about that as well. And we want that process to be just as easy as what is typically talked about as the complaint process. But we know that there are compliments as well. We want to track those, and we want to make it an easy, accessible process for citizens and businesses and whomever our law enforcement comes in contact, to have the ease of that. So that would be a huge example of upgrade and resources and software. Currently, all of that's being tracked with spreadsheets and other archaic, as I'll call it, ways. And so we want to improve that process. Once again, same with the first bullet point, making everything easier and accessible helps foster those stronger relationships, helps foster that idea of transparency and collaboration between those three prongs. The next bullet point, require committee to abide by Open Meetings Act rules and allow for executive session. This was also feedback from those discussions with Chief Captain Griffith and Cleary. So one, obviously making those Open Meeting Act rules so that it is public. People have an opportunity, just like this meeting. If they can't watch now, they can watch later. The accessibility of that. But also the other really important part that was added to this was the allowing the executive session. And this came from that feedback from those discussions with our law enforcement agency, is that there's sometimes things, and I'll get to this, or I talked about this in the con about the data privacy. Sometimes there are things that do need to be discussed behind closed doors for whatever reason, because of the sensitivity of them. The parties involved and various different things like that. And strategies and things, and there sometimes needs to be an opportunity for that. So having the committee members have the opportunity to go into executive session, speak with legal, and hash out, get a better understanding of what the parameters are before coming back out in the public, just like we do, was a recommendation made by that, and I thought it was a strong recommendation. Next bullet point, clearly define terminology for all parties to clearly understand the expectations, i.e. community policing models. Through these discussions that I've been talking about with law enforcement, one of the things that came up was defining some of these terms. Even though some people may have an idea or of what community policing is, we need to be very specific about what that means here in Kyle. And so part of creating the ordinance and then the direction of the committee would be defining these words and having a clear understanding, so all three of those prongs know exactly what we're talking about with community policing. So defining terms like that. And then the next bullet point here is collaborate and consult with KPD and community throughout entire process and creation of the ordinance. So important as well. I mentioned it above. Collaborating with all of those prongs in order to get feedback, input, have the voices heard, various different things like that. Like I said, from the early ideas mentioned in the bullet points above, a lot of good ideas and discussion come from that can really help us meet the expectations. And I can tell you from my communication and meetings with Chief and Captain and the Law Enforcement Association, I also did this same presentation, but added more in this next slide from the feedback. I went and this was maybe in March that I met with, I was invited by President Cleary and the association to do this exact presentation I'm doing for you all today, to kind of talk that out and go through the charter amendment that happened, and then what the idea of the ordinance is. And there's a lot of appreciation. There was a lot of appreciation for that and a lot of great feedback given to that. Certainly there are some concerns about some things that are yet to be determined, but they know that and they understood that a lot of that will be fleshed out in the creation of the ordinance and then on from that. So I think including KPD, our Law Enforcement Association, obviously the prong of the administration and the city council is important, but the final one is the community. And I'm going to touch back on that here when I wrap up my presentation. Next slide. Oh, was that my last one? Okay. Yes. No, thank you. This is the last slide. Thank you all for your patience while I got through this. Things to be decided with the ordinance, and this is just early things to be decided, and from creating clarity, also from those discussions that I've had with community members, but also in particular with the law enforcement agency. A lot of these, what you see here, are derived from that and some of the questions that they had, and I think they're legitimate questions, and I think we all know that these things need to be ironed out. So I want to be careful here and state that my goal with this agenda item is not to flesh out any of these bullet points or any of the things I talked about before. I'll get to the purpose of what I was hoping to get with this agenda item. but let me run through these here. Makeup of the committee. Obviously, that's a large part of the charter amendment. One of the largest parts, honestly, as I was saying before, everything else you saw in that charter amendment are already things that could have been done before by the council and asked of by the council. The only thing that was really new was that the committee that would collaborate with Cal PD. And that was a really important word I remember we put in from last August, was that collaboration part. And how many of the committee and how long they will serve. All things that would need to be fleshed out. And then I put in parentheses, it could be any combination of citizens, elected officials, law enforcement, etc. Next bullet point, how will they be selected and what criteria? One of these things was brought up in the association meeting, the law enforcement association meeting I had. Very good question. One of the things that was recommended was to look at the Code and Criminal Procedures, Chapter 19.08, Organization of the Grand Jury Qualifications. Once again, not saying that this is what I'm suggesting we do, but this was one of the feedbacks that I got, and so I wanted to put it out for all of council to see. And there, if you Google search Code and Criminal Procedures and that particular charter item, there are a list of grand jury qualifications. And so I guess the idea and feedback from the law enforcement agency when I did this presentation was to have some kind of outline similar to that of if there are any citizens that would be a part of the review committee. How often committee will meet? That was another question that came up. Wanted to put it in there. What happens when the committee makes recommendations? Any SMEs made available, and what that SMEs are subject matter experts made available to help explain department level decisions, procedures, policies, and should the SME be within or outside of the organization? So something to be fleshed out. And then finally, how wide or narrow will the scope be of what committee will do, review, and recommend per the language in the charter? So the charter does outline some things for the committee to do and collaborate with the police association, but obviously just with the ordinance, we're going to narrow the scope of exactly what we're trying to get as derived from the voter approved charter amendment. So that's the end of my PowerPoint presentation. And so the goal here was to continue the next steps. So what I would like council's support with is over the next couple of months is that if we could start to do that, engaging that third prong that I was talking about, the citizen prong, and getting early feedback on where we are and some of these early questions, and just getting some thoughts, whether that is any range of public open house to simply a survey online or something like that, anywhere in between, and anywhere in between, getting some of the feedback on that and thoughts on these certain different things for us to then consider. Getting that feedback and understanding and initial steps, just like what we're done with the law enforcement agency. Obviously, when we create an ordinance, there are 2 required public hearings, unless approved on the first hearing and finally passed. But in theory, there are 2 public hearings. What I don't think we should do is wait for those public hearings to start getting the public input. We should do that early on and before, as we're crafting this ordinance, similar to the discussions of with the law enforcement association, having these preliminary discussions. That's why I met with them in March to kind of talk these things through, get their early questions and feedback, so that way we can loop back around. And when we are finally putting together the ordinance that will be brought forward to the public and then have those public hearings, a lot of that groundwork has already been laid in getting that feedback and input from those prongs, particularly the law enforcement association and KPD as a whole, and then the community in which we all serve. So certainly not trying to have a long drawn out discussion about it, but one of the other things I wanted to do about doing it now and over these next couple of months, because our next budget workshop isn't until June 26th. I would like for us to have some group of us, certainly we could have something that all of us are involved, but some group of us come together to start engaging the public and getting that early input on some of these early questions that we might have. And so certainly open to the council adding to the questions and things that we need to be decided within the ordinances, any policies that we might put together from the creation of this ordinance. But that's what I was hoping to do in bringing forward this agenda item tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Ellison. Any comments? Councilor Rizzo.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we need to move forward with this, especially because the citizens have already voted on it. I'd encourage us to probably continue working with the task force that brought this forward. I know Councilmember Tobias, Councilmember Ellison, Councilor Villalobos was early on. I kind of took the role after him. I think that would be the task force, if y'all are open to that, if council's open to that, bringing this forward, getting the citizens involved, and their feedback would be crucial. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
Villalobos?
Villalobos was the.
Well, you're saying to have him still be a part of it?
No, myself. I took the role after.
I see. I got you.
Councilor Villalobos stepped down from council. Kind of filled in that role for him, so I'd like to be considered as part of that task force as well.
Okay, thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is Councilman Tobias. Yeah, it is something that we really need to tackle. And thank you, Councilman Nelson, for bringing this again. I know we've have talked about this before, and also when we were in the workshop. But I do feel strongly about we do need to get public input referencing this. And that's the only way that it's really going to work is we got to really hear from our residents. And we need to hear from them on their side as far as what they expect from this committee that is already basically in charge. So I do support this, and I am willing to get some kind of engagement with the community, whether it's a town hall or something like that we can do. On a weeknight, I don't mind myself coming in on a Saturday for just a couple hours, just 2 hours if we need to, on a Saturday, and just invite the public in to get their input and go and get the ball rolling on this. Again, because the whole point in my eyes when we're looking at the charter itself, when we go back to the promoting the transparency within the department to include the data sharing communication statewide, crime stats, because we want to be able to show the public not only just the issues the problems we've had with going on with the city, but the good things that are going on in our police department. We need to encourage our department, the good work they're doing, and we also want to show any kind of trends that are going on. When you have these quarterly briefings, you can go, let's say, January to March. We can have these briefings come on. We can have a statistical update on the DWIs that are going on in our city. Or we have public intoxication has increased from the last quarter, or the domestic violence cases and so forth. We can actually give real-time data information so the public can really see what areas are needing improvements, whether it's we got a DWI issue going on, we got a drinking problem going on, or we have some serious issues with burglaries of the buildings, and how we can basically see those trends within the year, not having a yearly one, but having it quarterly, so we can be able to address those issues in real time to where we could be able to help our police department if we need to, and they can give us those real data information. So I really support this measure right here. We do need to get this ordinance in place. So I really would like to get some kind of public input, and if we can get city staff to direct some kind of town hall meeting, or just one evening we can just have the public to give input on this. At least we can get the ball rolling on that, because we want to show that we really support our police department and they're doing a great job. And that's really what it's all about, not so much the disciplinary or the issues that we have with inside. We want to be able to show that we have a state-of-the-art, we have a good quality professional police department within our city.
Thank you. I had some thoughts as well. One, I really liked your data analyst position. recommendation, because I know that it's challenging. The more we ask of the police to provide us with data, if they don't have anyone that's actually hired to do that, not only is it difficult on them, but probably frustrating to us that we can't get what we want. And so that seems like a solution that certainly will be brought up during budget time. So I don't know, was that position one of the 30 some odd that were requested? It was on there as a part of it?
Yep.
Okay. Well, it seems like we're on the right track. The scope of the task force would be to create a kind of a public hearing kind of situation, town hall situation, maybe use comms to work on a survey or soliciting like feedback online, and then you would take that and bring that back to us as the next step? Or would you be trying to actually meet and kind of come up with more answers to the questions that you propose, which, by the way, those pretty comprehensive. So I thought that was well done on your presentation there. My thoughts are to say, let's keep circling back with the council. That's kind of the point I'm trying to get at. One step at a time, and then come back, let us know, and kind of ask for the next thing, essentially. So we're all kind of following along with you. Does that seem like something y'all want to do?
Certainly, and thank you for asking those questions. So my idea was certainly if we could put together an open house opportunity, but also use our channels. We have a wonderful comms department that we've built up over the last couple of years, and soliciting feedback and from that way. And then certainly bringing what we get from any outreach and feedback opportunities that we do, bringing that back to council and presenting that to council, similar to what I've done tonight. And my goal was to do that between now and the 26th. So if there are some things that are discovered throughout that process that we feel like we do need to implement in the budget, we could bring that forward on June 26th, because the earlier we do that, the better, right? We don't want to bring that in, getting into August and such and so forth. So that was another opportunity. And maybe it just stays with, it's just this data analyst position, and then that software, which, Scott, please tell me the name of that software. I know it's included in the budget as well, and I'm blanking on it because I'm thinking of the other software that I brought to you, but that's not the name of it. Just things like that. It may just turn out to be, those are the only recommendations from the task force on any budgetary items, or maybe there are some things through these processes that we discover, hey, this is something we may want to consider budgeting in this upcoming fiscal year. But yes, certainly the idea, just as with any task force, but even more so in this instance, continuing to follow back up with council with what our findings are, new ideas and different things as we continue to hash this out. And so as we creep closer to ultimately creating the ordinance.
Councilmember, there's two softwares that we looked at, Unarmed and iAPro.
iPro, that was the one. iPro?
iAPro.
iAPro, yeah. Yeah, and that's the one that Captain brought forward and was mentioned that a lot of agencies throughout Texas use it. It's so it would be something that would be familiarity, particularly if we hired for somebody that does this job, perhaps in another part of Texas. And so getting that information, I think that would be a huge step. I know Captain, and I must have missed it from past budgets, he said it's something that they've brought up in past budgets, but certainly I think just doing this and creating this ordinance and through Prop F, it just brought it to the front for light. And I think that is something that we should definitely equip our agency with doing. As you said, Mayor, earlier, equipping our agency with all the tools and resources they can have as we increase the expectations is only going to help them. Because if we don't do this, we're setting them up for failure if we don't supplement them with the resources and everything they need to meet these expectations.
Yeah, setting ourselves up for disappointment also. It's just double whammy there. So I think it's a pretty good proposal. Does anyone who's not mentioned on the task force want to have a conversation about the proposal? Councilor Floresco.
I want to say thank you for your research. sometimes when you do that research, you find things that aren't always pleasing. And I like the fact that you put it out there, because sometimes someone might think these are your thoughts, but the reality is you're looking at it from all points of view. And so I appreciate that, and I appreciate you bringing that to light. We've discussed this for hours one time, and I just want everyone to know that this is not something that we're going to try to police the police with. We just want to increase the transparency and have an open relationship with the police department. I myself has personally asked Barnett, Chief Barnett, for several of these reports already. So the fact that they'll just automatically be given to us is just one more item off my plate. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, and certainly, Mr. Sellers, council may or may not want my PowerPoint presentation. Certainly happy if you wouldn't mind sharing that with them. And like I said, just from reviewing various committees and organizations that have done this across the country, and I thank you, Councilmember Flores Kale, for acknowledging that, because this is going to be challenging, creating this ordinance. It'll be one of the more challenging things I think I'll do in my entirety of council. And so that's why I don't want to rush it, but I do want to get as much input and feedback from all three of those prongs as possible. And that one of those prongs, as I stated earlier, was this council and administration. So certainly, if council agrees, I would look forward working with Councilmember Tobias and Councilmember Rizzo and hitting the ground running, even as soon as this week or something like that, and doing a brainstorming and using our time wisely between now and June 26th.
Sounds good. I would probably just kind of make a recommendation. If we do a town hall, we could do it on a Friday evening for an hour or so if we need to, and just invite the public over, and we can go from there. Just something like that.
So this item is,
I think
it's not listed for action. So can we give direction to create a task force and give a general scope of first steps, even though it's just listed as discussion, since it's not?
You can give direction.
Yeah.
You can take that.
I think this would be good to give direction on if we're all in agreement, official direction, so you can kind of have that to carry with you. Is that okay with everyone?
Sure. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to create a Proposition F task force, and I would like to nominate Councilmember Ellison, Rizzo, and Tobias to be assigned to that task force and give them the direction to solicit public feedback as it relates to Proposition F, up to and including the use of communications department as staff liaison and creation of town hall, and then bring back their thoughts on that at a future date. It's been moved by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Flores Kale. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is that clear, broad enough for y'all?
Yeah, I think it's pretty broad, and I certainly appreciate you keeping it broad for us to kind of work between that. But certainly the idea is to keep you all included, and we may even come back in one of the June meetings before June 26th with an agenda item if something comes up that we really feel we need to get council's input on sooner than that.
Well, I feel pretty confident that you'll come back as soon as you're able to get it all put together. So there's no worry about trying to force you to come back, because I know you will. So.
Gotcha. I just know I know it's always a concern about task force and the end date and all that stuff.
Yeah, we're going to get there.
Not trying to prolong this.
Yeah.
I want to get this ball rolling, and certainly I appreciate council's support in this next step in getting the community involvement.
I think it's difficult for council to figure out exactly what steps to take, so I appreciate the assistance. This feels pretty natural and right, so that makes me happy. So, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you, council.
I don't know why I always close my agenda when I'm not done. Before we go on to the beggars ordinance, Paige, you ready to go back? All right, I'm going to reopen Agenda item number 17, first reading an ordinance amending Chapter 53 of the City of Kyle, Texas for the purpose of modifying Section 53893, conditional use permit required in Hayes County, Texas. What do you got for us?
Mayor and Council, Paige Sines, City Attorney for the record. I appreciate the opportunity to look at this a little bit more in depth because it was more nuanced than what I earlier indicated. There's a couple of things that have come out. This is a new statute. It was adopted in the last legislative session, so we don't have a lot of data about what the courts think about it. But we do have a couple things. We have an AG opinion, and we have an exception in the ordinance that would be relevant here. So the AG opinion looked at this issue and was asked whether a city could regulate paint colors under this new statute. And the AG said that there are too many facts and circumstances that go into analyzing the statute to give an answer. So that means that it depends on the facts and circumstances. It's not a hard no or a hard yes coming from the Attorney General's office. One of those factors that's relevant is there are exceptions to the application of that statute that prohibits the city from regulating building materials, paint colors, those types of things. And one of the exceptions is that that statute does not apply to a building located in a place or area designated for its historical, cultural, or architectural importance.
In other words, an overlay.
Right, and significance by the governmental entity if designated before April 1st, 2019. And so you have overlays that deal with historical importance and architectural importance. And that's what this particular amendment applies to. So it would be reasonable for you to keep those regulations in there as stated. Because there's an exception that applies. Doesn't mean that somebody couldn't challenge you. It doesn't mean that a court could disagree. But we have language in the statute that supports you keeping those regulations in place.
Okay. Howard, it sounds like the dissent it seems like P&Z might be open to trying to make our overlay districts more robust. Does that seem like the sentiment that they were showing, like this is something they'd like to dive into deeper?
Agreed. And I won't say unfortunately, we cast a very broad net in Kyle. This applies to all of our overlays. So there's been some discussion and some consternation and no clear direction on what to do with our downtown area. Although we might all agree on what to do with the I-35 overlay or the 1626 overlay or the old 81 overlay, I can't necessarily say the same thing for the downtown. So I didn't want scope creep to blow this wide open and get so granular and detailed, especially because the expectation of what 1626 will look like over by Walmart and Goodwill could be vastly different than what the expectation will be from our downtown versus what it might be on 1626 north of Kohlers. So all those things put together, we tried to stay simple. And a couple of folks on the dais really didn't. They wanted to tear into it. They wanted to blow this up and blow it out and get really granular with it. That wasn't the point or the purpose at its inception, and I thought in the middle of the process was probably a little bit too late for that. So staff was able to acquiesce with the text changes that came from P&Z a month ago, and that's the second section that's in the staff report. So that's what our recommendation would be for right now. Moving forward, yeah, I think we need to look at it a lot more closely. I think it was relevant and well-intentioned and well-crafted 10 years ago-ish, in that neighborhood. But as Kyle continues to evolve, so too does our regulation of Kyle.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. So what the changes, including color and some of the other things, essentially what I'm reading is if someone within the overlay wants to repaint their building, if they repaint it the same color, they don't have to ask permission, but if they want to change colors, they do?
Alteration of exterior. So usual and customary maintenance to keep things as is would not require oversight. As the administrator of this code, if somebody came and asked me, I would not require them to go through.
So at what point do we establish what colors we do and do not want? Because it seems like they harped in on the color, and obviously there's some precedent. Right, but is it in this section of the zoning ordinance, or it's in the actual overlay district text?
This is in the zoning ordinance, so
Right.
that's why it's before you now.
So
That's where
essentially, it
comes
gives
from.
us the ability within, so we'd have to come back into the overlays themselves, in those ordinances and say what colors we would allow.
Yeah,
because-
right now, there are two sections, where the overlays are, and it describes them, and then there is a set of standards that is applicable to all of them. But they don't differentiate the standards per the spatial, location of the overlay.
I
So
think the
which are-
color deal is gonna be just an absolute can of worms.
Could be.
I think it's gonna be
Could be.
no fun.
But I think, it's the same way, the old SCOTUS argument, I can't define it, but I can point to it when I see it.
Yeah, but you can't codify that in an overlay. You have to define it in the overlay.
But there's additional language. Really, what we're talking about tonight is not changing the allowances. It doesn't encourage any changes. It doesn't discourage any changes. It doesn't allow for something. It doesn't prohibit anything. Really, what we're talking about tonight with these text changes are just the triggers. Previously, there were loopholes that, if there's no trigger, there's no oversight. And so a lot of people were taking the left lane, the bypass lane. Well, now we've closed the bypass lane and we've required greater oversight. But that is all concerned with the trigger of oversight, not necessarily what the standards are. Do we need to talk about the standards? Yes. Can we get that done in, 5-week process of, an ad in the paper, one meeting in front of P&Z and then one in front of this board? No. No, it's going to take more talk than that.
And you're okay with the changes that P&Z put in here?
With
you
this
think?
change, yes.
Well, the blue language, the
Correct.
extra, including the color and all that. You think that's fine? All right, any questions or thoughts on this?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item 17.
Second. Moved by Councilman Rizzo, second by the mayor. Is there any more discussion?
And you're
No,
you're specifically talking about the P&Z amendment text, correct? Just for clarity? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Councilor Ellison.
Yeah, I want to thank Howard and his staff and planning and the Planning and Zoning Department, or Planning and Zoning Committee, for working on this and bringing it forward. I did listen to that hour-long discussion as well that Howard referenced earlier. Always appreciate thoughtful discussion and kicking things around. But this is one of the things that I brought up in the visioning retreat as well and looking further into. And so I'm glad we were able to make this work. And thank you, Paige, for looking into this to make sure we're legally in good standing. So I support this.
Yeah, it was good information to know, too. So there's some strategy there as far as how we might work with the statute, work out around it. I don't think the legislature is listening to me right now. In line with it.
And consistent.
Right. We're picking that left lane, right, that Howard just talked about. So any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 6-1. All right, let's see. Next up, agenda item number 28, discussion of possible action to direct staff to prepare a camping and begging activity ordinance. Councilmember Flores Kale.
Thank you very much. So this is kind of a sensitive topic. So I wrote something out to make sure I hit all my points. But if at any point anyone has a questions, feel free to ask. All right, after reviewing the City of Kyle's ordinances and researching surrounding city ordinances, I realized the City of Kyle is in a good position to become proactive regarding both campers and beggars/solicitors/peddlers. Not really sure what we want to call them. The City of Kyle currently has little of no campers and minimal solicitors within the city. By amending our ordinances now, the City of Kyle does not have to spend time and energy relocating residents and proactively construct plans to assist with underlying issues that lead to homelessness, such as low income and joblessness. The goal of this ordinance is not to displace anyone. Instead, the goal is to create an environment where everyone can feel safe and secure. My intent is to be proactive when handling these types of sensitive issues, which I see our surrounding cities battling daily. Currently, there is a prohibitive camping in different articles in our ordinances, meaning we do have some scattered throughout the ordinances. I'd like to see a defined section dedicated to both camping and beggars/solicitors in our ordinance. I have read the City of Rollingwood, San Marcos's, and New Braunfels ordinances and think Kyle could benefit from researching each of these ordinances. I also want to note that we are not Austin, and we do not have the dilemmas they have. I'm not asking to look at this ordinance for any other reason than to be proactive.
Okay. So you're asking permission to come back with the actual creation of a beggars and solicitors ordinance. The intention would be to create something that eliminates camping from the
Correct.
city or from park space or public space.
All of the city.
Okay. We have a panhandling section in our parking ordinance, an anti-panhandling section. Probably not the best spot for it. Intention would be to bring that into this as well.
Correct. I want to expand on it.
Do you have thoughts on how you want to expand on it? What the proposal might be?
I'm going to let city staff go ahead and do that.
Okay.
And then
Paige?
I'm more
Sorry, I
than
don't mean
willing
to
to
put you on
help
the
them. No,
spot,
it's
just
okay.
to give kind of a sense of what we're up to here. Paige?
I think when we look at that, I also want to look at the city of San Marcos because they have an excellent ordinance. And my goal is always to look at other cities, which I think have the same issues, and kind of learn from them.
Okay.
There are several cities that have these types of ordinances, and so, and we've prepared them ourselves, and I think we've seen, in some cases, what works and what doesn't. And so there's some, with input from the police department, I think we'd be able to come with something reasonable for the council's consideration that would address camping, panhandling activity, those types of issues that may be of concern.
Yeah, I don't think it's an issue now, but obviously with the amount of displacement that could take place in Austin, we might as well figure out what our position's going to be. So I appreciate you bringing it forward. Anybody have any thoughts on this?
Maybe some of the language could specify temporary or housing, or anything that might bring somebody that might want to camp here or set up a tent for how long. You can specify that. My thing is that, it probably hasn't happened, but I know that we have a lot of clubs, let's say Boy Scouts or Girl Scout clubs. Later on, when we have our parks opened up, would that affect them if they decide in years to come to where they want to have a camping night out or something like that? Would that take effect, or would that be something to look at? I'm just looking at it from a perspective of like what would be considered camping, prohibited camping versus, let's say, in years to come, we do have a camp area that could be just designated for just those civic groups.
You could address that in definitions in the ordinance and have designated camping areas or times for camping within the city and define those areas and those times, and that's how you could regulate that activity and then still allow those other uses that you're wanting to allow.
How does council feel about that, or should we just go across the board?
I'm good with making exceptions for groups, residents that want to camp out, like say at our Cow Lake. The one part that I would have a little issue is with trying to provide housing for people that are coming through. We're not experts in this. Cities are never experts in something like that. There's a lot of wonderful groups in the city that can provide that resource and already do. I can think of just one right now that I volunteer with that does a great job, and that's St. Vincent de Paul. And they do a great job of getting people here in Kyle. I've seen the members get phone calls at night that there's somebody that's displaced. They get them somewhere to stay, and we've got to leave those issues to the professionals. And I think that's the way we can address it.
I guess what I'm getting at is later on, as we begin to have more park space, and let's say as festivals come around, using RVs or campers or setting up tents for overnight stays because of these festivals, would that be considered part of the ordinance as well? Or are we looking at basically somebody that's actually setting up a temporary housing in camping? We can to put that in the language.
You could probably add
be
that
specific.
Camping would be by permit only And that would be the
permit
way
only.
around it.
Or camping that's in accordance with city's park rules and consistent with the city's park rules wouldn't be camping that's subject to the camping ban in this ordinance.
Right. I think they can be separated out, is what I'm saying, so. Councilman Bradshaw.
Councilmember Tobias actually had I had the same questions as him, but I also just wanted to thank you for bringing this forth and being proactive and taking the initiative to get the ball rolling for something like this.
I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to bring back a ordinance consistent with the item outlined in the agenda. It's been motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Flores Kale. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, we have several items that we want to discuss in executive session. Do we want to bring
City manager's report.
city manager's report? Let's go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. I've got a staff member who's here to report on an item on that city manager's report.
Say that again.
Oh, Paul. Okay. Yeah, Paul's going to talk about one item, so I'm going to bring him up here in just a minute as I go through the report. Okay, I am sharing my screen here. All right. Council, for the record, Scott Sellers, city manager. This always takes just a second to advance. There we go. Okay. COVID-19 testing and vaccine update. There are changes per the type of vaccine that you receive based on the minimum age requirements. So basically, just get on our website, citykyle.com COVID, to learn about where to find the vaccine doses. Really wanted to just highlight the great activity that was done Sunday with our mass vaccination event, and I'll let a couple of council members who were there share their experience with it.
I think staff and everyone involved did a great job, all the partnerships. It was a great event considering that we had rain most of the day. And yeah, we did get a little bit wet, but I just wanted to take a moment to thank some people. First of all, I want to thank Samantha and her team of communications for getting the word out. When it started raining, I was worried about the numbers being very small, and we had some pretty good numbers. We had people lined up before 7 a.m., so that was great. I want to take a minute to thank Dr. Michelle Cohen and all the work she did helping pass out some of the flyers through her grassroots organization. Hayes Latinos United. This is a group that Dr. Michelle Cohen put together to help those that might not receive help due to economics, due to language barriers, any circumstances. The reason she put this group together and has done a great job of during COVID, during the snowpocalypse, of getting resources to people that are most vulnerable in our communities. And I just wanted to take a minute to thank her for the work she's done in our community. This has been an amazing thing to witness. The amount of energy that she spends and the true love for her community that she has is amazing. Also want to thank Jerry Hendricks for showing up there early. He was there before me, and he stayed there after me. So definitely, Jerry was there before opening and after closing. Did a great job. I want to thank Julie as well, who was there. Julie did a great job. Yep, exactly. She did a great job too, was there, very helpful, got us started, did all the running around early on and was able to get all the supplies everybody did. But I also want to thank the National Guard. What a great group of young people. Those young men and women do a great job. They made the process very easy. And they were so professional about it. But the way they work together is fun to watch. To see the leadership skills these young people have is something that I was in awe throughout the day of, and to see the way they work is amazing. But I also want to thank TDS. I'd like to thank Aaron Zwinger as well for her participation in this, and everybody else. If I left anybody out, I'm sorry, but it was a great, and I'd like to thank Councilmember Kell for going out there. It's great to go out there and have fun with a fellow council member. It was a great day. And 412 people received, I'm sorry, 421 people received a vaccination, and thank you, Tracy, for coming out and getting your vaccination.
Shot by the Air Force.
As more people get vaccinated, we can return to a sense of normalcy. I'll never take anything for granted again in my life, not even going to the store. It's been a hard year, and I'm just thankful everybody's coming out and getting vaccinated and doing their part to get back to normal.
All right.
I was going to try to thank everybody, and I was thinking about it, and I pulled a Rizzo. I was like, that's a lot of people. I don't want to leave anybody out, but the city did such an amazing job. And I'm going to look at Jerry, because Jerry is a champ. He was there in the morning. He was there till 5. He had a good attitude. And I'm going to encourage each and every one of the city council members to try to attend some of these things, because you develop a different kind of relationship with the staff than you do just when you come to the meetings or when you see them in their office. We had some really great conversations, and Julie was great as well. Just so you know, Julie's with Public Works, and she always goes above and beyond. There's also Tatum, is that what it's called? Tatum? She was amazing. She kind of made me get out of my shell a little bit and was like, go talk to all these cars. And I was like, I get nervous. And so anyway, she walked with me, and we had a different level relationship as well. But as he was saying, those, I don't want to call them kids, but either I'm getting older or they're getting a lot younger, but they were out there like true champs, and they were just so willing to step up and be here all day in the rain. I saw them filling out like paperwork, and then they took it to another part of the area where somebody would physically go in there and type in all the information. And I just want to make the statement that for anybody who thinks that this is a tracking device for the government, I saw how that process works, and there is no way. There's just no way. Those sweet people out there were on their best just trying to keep up with that paperwork. So anyways, it was a great time, and I can't wait until June 13th, which is going to be from 8 to 1, for the second dose. And just so everybody knows, I also got my first dose that same day as Tracy Shields.
It only took 3 National Guardsmen to hold her down, but we got it done.
I made Jerry talk to me.
All right, thank you. Next, just an update on the budget calendar. You'll see some internal deadlines that we have, and then our next budget work session is Saturday, June 26th. So please make sure that's on your calendar, same time and same place. Speaking of mass events, we have our mass food distribution event coming up this Saturday from 9 to 12 at the ACC campus. So again, we are in need of volunteers, and you can sign up through the city website at cityofkyle.com/calendar. This Friday night is our next family skate night at the Ash Pavilion. Again, registration is required, just like last time. You'll see through our website, cityofkyle.com/recreation, and learn more about the activity. Great event coming up for the public. It's our Heroes Memorial Park groundbreaking. That is on Memorial Day, Monday, May 31st from 10 to 11:30. We will be congregating next to the Hayes Performing Arts Center, basically around the pond on the corner of Kohlers and 1626. So please join us as we honor our veterans and first responders and other community heroes. And we'll have a few festivities as part of that occasion. So it should be great for the whole community. Welcome everyone to come out. More information at cityofkyle.com/heroes. Our Public Trails Open House event is scheduled for Tuesday, June 1st. That will be here in the council chambers from 4 to 6 p.m., just in advance of National Trails Day, which is June 5th, and also in advance of our city council meeting that evening. This is an opportunity for the citizens to see where those trail segments are in the city of Kyle, and offer their input on location, material type, width, and amenities. So please, for anybody in Kyle who is interested in our citywide trail system, which includes Emerald Crown and some other local connections, please come to this event and make your voices heard. Have a lot of things coming up. Citywide cleanup event is June 5th from 8 to 11:30. This is for residents of Kyle. Please, as you see here on the slide, be prepared to leave your vehicle to help unload at the drop site. You'll see the items that are accepted, and that the list is there. You can find much more information at cityofkyle.com/cleanup. And this year, you'll see household hazardous items are accepted in that event. It is at Greg Clark Park. I failed to mention that. It's Greg Clark Park on June 5th. Market days, we have our next Market Days event coming up, second Saturday of the month. That's at Greg Clark Park on June 12th from 9 till 12. And you'll see vendors, etc., food items. Booths are still available for vendors, and more information, cityofkyle.com/recreation. Second to last slide here is our class of 21. We wanted to say congratulations to all of Kyle's graduating seniors. We don't have another council meeting prior to graduation, so I want to say that now. So thanks for a great year, class of 21. And finally, I'd like to bring up Paul Phelan, our library director, to talk about our summer reading program.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Paul Phelan, Director of Library Services, for the record. And I just want to give you all a brief rundown of the summer reading program this year. So this year, the 2021 summer reading program, the theme is a bounty of books. So it's a pirate theme and, of course, everything aquatic. And one of the things I would like to have the opportunity to let the citizens know that, of course, the library is very interested in literacy. And one of the most important things you can do for your child is to get them reading, okay? So, and I always say this, as a former school teacher, and I taught social studies, all the topics, biology, and you name it, but the one thing that made the students the most successful was actually their ability to read, and the ones that read a lot, because people that read a lot, when they just read their textbooks or whatever they're doing and thinking through problems, it really helps them. So the one thing that you can do to help your student is just to keep them reading in the summer. And another thing that we find is that students do well during the year, and there always seems to be kind of a fallback in the summer for some reason. So this is a great chance for them to read fun books and involve themselves in the program and keep their reading skills up to a good level when they start next year. At any rate, the summer reading program registration will run from June 1st through July 31st. It is online. You can just go, and not right now, but June 1st, and all this stuff's on our Facebook page, cityofkyle.com/library. You'll be able to register. For folks that don't have a computer, we will have items you can come down and get a reading log, and you can do it that way as well. So for every 3 hours, the teens, the children, and adults can come by and pick up a prize for that reading. And then after 24 hours of completed reading during that summer reading program, you get a certificate. We have most of the stuff that we've got lined up is going to be online. So we've got about 9 programs, music programs, origami, various teen programs, puppet programs, and different storytelling programs. Most of those will be digital online, although we did take a chance, and you have to book these folks way in advance. And so we were looking into the future. The last couple are scheduled to be in person, so we'll see how that works. Obviously, that may not work out. But our last scheduled program will be July 31st. Now, the other thing is we're also very hopeful that the numbers will continue to look better and everybody's going to be happy. And so my greatest hope is that we will end this summer reading program with a very large event along the lines of when we had the medieval fair, that type of thing. So we'd love to get out and have and of course it'd be outdoors, so I think that makes it, much safer. But we have not scheduled that yet. But if the numbers look good and I get the okay from these two gentlemen sitting on either side, we plan on finishing this up with getting back to what we used to do. So, and that's pretty much it, unless you have any questions.
Makes me very happy.
I just want to say, I took Matthew, my son, the other day, and your staff was very helpful and very nice, and was making sure that that we found everything we needed. They were very attentive, and just wanted to say thank you. And excited, we're already telling them to sign up already for the reading program.
Yeah.
And hopefully in the next year or so, we'll have a sci-fi kind of fair or something. I remember they were watching those movies. We're having those. Hopefully those will come back soon.
That was a couple, we usually rotate those. It's
Yeah.
usually, yeah. Because I remember a couple of years ago, we had R2-D2 down there and,
Yes.
and the Saber people that
I'm
were
still
putting
on the
on
Star
things.
Wars kick.
So
Yeah, I
there
just
you
came back
go.
from Disney World, so.
Paul, I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate what you said about that summer dip that sometimes students have. That's not something small to overlook, and I appreciate your commitment to that in our community, and continue to keep our young people engaged throughout the summers. We know that is a hidden problem sometimes, and so I appreciate you addressing that tonight. And then just as well, these summer reading programs are always a hit. I love the fun ideas that you all come up with. You have a creative staff there that always has a lot of fun with it, and it always turns out to be a great time for those that participate. So thank you again, and certainly appreciate everything that y'all do.
Thank you.
Just real quickly, Paul, so you're like last year, you're going to put all the required summer reading for the different school grades and everything. Will the books be online as well?
So the plan will be, we will get all of those books online. And then, of course, we do have a good chunk of those in the collection as well.
Correct.
But then I will make sure that we have all those online as well, too.
Yeah,
So
I
so
know-
they could just check them out from home. if they
And one
need to.
reason is because I know some of the parents work during the day and the kids don't have anyone to bring them by, but if they could participate and get those books online
You
and be a
bet.
part of the program, it'd be great. So yeah, awesome. Thanks for the great job you do, Paul.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul. Anything else?
I just had one thing on the city manager report, citywide cleanup. No, we've had it at Krug Park for these last two times. Is there going to be another site added in the future, like near the hospital? Because had a resident ask me, if there's another site, because last time he was there there for almost 2 or 3 hours in line, because he backs up all the way down. So I just didn't know if there was going to be another site or two that'll eventually be in the future.
Yes, Samantha Armbruster, Director of Communications. So we know that we saw a lot of traffic issues at the site last year. The code enforcement team has done some great work in rethinking the flow, and even working with our partners with TDS and Green Guy Recycling to mitigate those traffic issues. So we're going to be pushing out some outreach in the coming weeks to educate people ahead of time of what to expect and how to get to Greg Clark Park. It's going to be very different from last year, again, to alleviate some of those traffic issues. At this time, there hasn't been any conversation about a second site, but there has been conversation about having more of them each year to hopefully meet the demand. But we hope the changes that have been made for this year will help with the traffic.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
If I'm correct, the contract with TDS allows us to have 2 a year, correct?
I think you might be referring to the bulky pickup.
Yes.
That is available to our residents through our TDS contract, and that is information that we'll be sharing with the visitors that come to the citywide cleanup event.
You're talking about the monthly one, where you can dump a truckload of trash or?
So there's a couple of different resources available to our utility customers. They have 2 bulky pickups. So that's where they actually put the waste out at their property and it's picked up by TDS. There's also the monthly drop-off at the landfill site that's available as well. And if you go to cityofkyle.com/waste, that has all of that information and how to use those resources. But what to Councilman Tobias was referring to was about this citywide cleanup event on June 5th.
So we're only doing one of those a year?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I was under the impression we were doing 2. I'm sorry. So yeah, if we could bring out another letter, because I know I'm still getting A lot of people still don't know about the monthly disposal they can do at TDS, the truckload of trash. I'd like to see something go out again, media-wise, but also maybe in the newsletter, because I know a lot of people still don't know about it. We're still getting people dumping trash on the side of the road in our parks. During the cleanup, I noticed that, and if they knew that that resource is there, I think they would take advantage of it, you know.
Yeah, we'll absolutely be adding more outreach, and it's always a good time to do it around that cleanup event. So before, during, and after, our residents will be hearing more about what's available to them.
Thank you, Samantha.
Of course.
All done? Sir. All right, so we're going to read into exec the items that we didn't do, so we'll probably just reread them all because we didn't get through very many. And then agenda items 19 through 24.
Pursuant to Chapter 551, Texas Government Code, the City Council reserves the right to convene into executive session from time to time as deemed necessary during this meeting. The City Council may convene into executive session pursuant to any lawful exception contained in Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, including any or all of the following topics: pending or contemplated litigation, or to seek the advice of the city attorney pursuant to Section 551.071, CO bond, possible creation of TERS, American Rescue Plan, automated metering infrastructure, Mary Kyle Hartson Park Electric Service, possible purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate pursuant to Section 551.072, acquisition of public parkland tracts, acquisition of right-of-way, convene into executive session pursuant to Section 551.087 Texas Government Code to deliberate regarding the offer of economic incentives to one or more business prospects that the city seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the city. Project Pacific Blue, Project E-Burning, Project Goldfish, Project SUFC, Project Shamrock, Project Wild Strawberry, Project Tomahawk, Project Pinstripes.
I'm going to call this meeting back to order. Our mics are off. That's fine.
Test.
Our mics are off. Hello.
Test, 1, 2.
Hello.
Test. Testing, 1, 2.
Okay, it works.
Mic test. Probando.
I'm going to call this meeting back to order. There was no action taken during executive session. There will be no action taken now. We're going to take up several of the items that have been postponed, starting with agenda item number 19. Consider approving an amendment regarding declaration related to the conveyance of the Central Park parcel to the city and authorizing the city manager to execute documents related to closing on the parcel. We can probably do that, and there we go. That and agenda item number 20 at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and also bring up agenda item number 20, consider impossible action to approve a temporary construction easement and access agreement. These are both page if you want to bring them forward.
Mayor and council, page signs for the record. These two items relate to an agreement that the city council approved and entered on March 12th of this year related to conveyance of several parcels to the city. These relate to the Central Park parcel and the Heroes Memorial Tract parcel. The first item, number 19, provides for an alternate declaration to apply to the park parcel. This is in the uptown area, and there are declarations that apply to the parcel. However, those are not appropriate for a city property and public park. So this document would replace those and authorize the declarant, the developer, to go and have those declarations amended so that the city's not required to do things like pay assessments or be subject to mechanics liens under the declarations in the POA. This document does put some requirements related to the use of the property being consistent with park uses, regulates nuisances that would interfere with the development of the area, and provides for the park to be maintained in a first-class manner, and provides for some enforcement of that only through self-help or through an injunctive relief if the declarant has an issue with the city's maintenance of the park.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 19 and 20 as discussed in executive session.
Second.
It's been moved by the mayor, seconded by Councilman Rizzo. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next up, agenda item number 21, authorize, award, and execute. I'll bring up 21 and 22 together. Authorize, award, and execution of a contract with CADENCE MCSHANE Construction Company in an amount not to exceed $7,950,000 for the construction of Heroes Memorial Park. And item number 22, authorize, award, and execution of a contract with Stoddard Construction Management in an amount not to exceed $4,850,000 for the construction of Uptown Central Park and cultural trails. Mr. Sellers.
Mayor, Council, Scott Sellers for the record. I think a picture says 1,000 words, and in this case, I'm just going to scroll you through some of the pictures that have been shared publicly. This is what you're voting on this evening. So these are pictures of the Central Park. Ooh, my word. We've got playground elements here with a bobcat, a nice play area for kids, beautiful pavilion. The lighted path here is the cultural trail, which will extend all the way to Heroes Memorial Park. You'll see water elements in the park. This is basically 1.6 acres, 1.56 acres, surrounded by the vertical mixed-use development in the uptown area. Cascading waterfalls, artistic elements, a lot of landscaping, and the overall visual of the design, the look and feel of this park. This is the Heroes Memorial Park visual. That is the graphical layout. You can see the pond and how it's going to be utilized. There will be a private cafe adjacent to the pond. Within the pond, there will be a bridge structure over the lake with some water features, central lawn with flag. And then you'll see back in the back a wall. Here's a closer visual of the wall with some of the design elements included, cascading water, etc. So those are the two projects. Again, here's Memorial Park going to CADENCE MCSHANE, and then the Central Park to Stoddard Construction. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, it's been a long journey to get to this point, to award these contracts, get them designed. Certainly a lot of excitement to see these projects get underway. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve. Second. It's been motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Bradshaw. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next up, we'll bring items 22 and 23 up together. Consider approving a resolution directing publication of a notice of public hearing and intent to issue a combination tax and revenue certificates of obligation and acceptance of the resolution of the board of the Kyle Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Number 2 is passed on April 29th, 2021, authorizing the City Council of the City of Kyle to issue on its behalf certificates of obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $5 million for the design and construction of 3 roads in Uptown Plum Creek development and other related matters, and direct the city to prepare a reimbursement agreement between the city and TERS Number 2 for the repayment of debt associated with this bond. Mr. Sellers.
Again, Council, Scott Sellers for the record. I think the caption is very all-inclusive, pretty much says the intent in the TERS meeting that There was more discussion about the actual roadways, but this is basically $5 million in certificate of obligation debt that would be issued for the construction of several roadways in the uptown area.
Repaid by the TERS, and there's also an agreement forthcoming to encapture how the developer is contributing
That's correct.
Towards this as well.
That's correct.
I'd like to make a motion to approve. It's been moved by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Bradshaw, that we approve agenda items number 23 and 24. Is there discussion on this motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn.
Just before we adjourn, Mayor, I'd just like to thank, a minute with the rain, I started thinking about the logistics of this past weekend, and it couldn't have been made possible without the tents we had out there. I want to thank Sarah Watson for working hard to get those tents for us. We were at a loss when we lost the original tents that we were promised, and Sarah worked really hard and diligently to get that done, and I just wanted to take a minute to thank her.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Go to bed.